Yes, finally the DAC man is back at reviewing his favorite hi-fi gear, digital to analog converters. And in the next few weeks I'll be trying 3 very different sounding DAC converters. The first one is the most affordable one, but also the most different on the inside, but more about that in a second. The next one is quite punchy, quite dynamic, and it's a great buy below $2 kilo. And the last one, it's exactly like that, the last DAC you'll ever need, but expect to pay a premium price because that one is quite expensive. But let's start with the most different, unique and most affordable one. The topping D90 Discrete, which usually goes for $999 US, but for a few days it's reduced to $849 US. And if you want to know how the best tapping DAC is sounding, I believe now is your chance to snatch a unit for such a great price. Alright guys, so let's check it out in the usual fashion. Design-wise, if you ever tried a D90, D90 MQA or D90 SE, then we are looking at absolutely the same chassis, the same build quality, the same dimensions, with two but small differences, but good ones in my opinion. We now have metallic feet as opposed to small rubber feet. We have rubber inlays. These ones are of a much higher quality. And this time around we also have a glass panel on top, so you can see with the naked eye some of those PSRM DAC modules. Unfortunately, we do not have any dimming lights around those modules as we had on the DX9 limited edition DAC. Build quality wise, I have nothing to complain about this unit. The only complaint I have is that we have again the same plasticky remote control that I've been seeing for the last 5 years or so. As with all flagship tapping DACs, we have every single digital input on its back except for BNC, and of course this is a fully balanced DAC, so we are getting a pair of RCA and XLR analog outputs. It's important to mention that in the stock form it outputs 2 volts via RCA and 4 volts via XLR, but you can increase the voltage to 2.5 via RCA and 5 volts via XLR, and in my humble opinion it sounds slightly better with these higher voltages, slightly boosting the performance when using it as a DAC only unit. Of course, besides being a DAC, it can work as a passive preamplifier, but considering that you are losing bits of information when you are using that passive preamp volume control, if you want the best results from this one, simply bypass the volume control, let it work in DAC mode, and I believe it sounds best in this mode. But what makes this DAC so different compared to anything that tapping has made so far? This is their very first single bit DAC, so it decodes 1 bit at a time using 16-phase PSRM DAC modules that tapping has developed so far. So this is not an R2 DAC, this is a 1-bit DAC. Something that tapping never made, but I'm very glad they started making such interesting DACs. The interesting part is that we do not have a delta sigma modulator like we have on chip-based converters, those that are using IEM silicon, ESS technology, silicon, Cirrus Logic, Wolfson, so on and so forth. And that's why it upsamples everything to a much higher sampler rate. Unfortunately, we do not know what is that sampler rate. Tapping is not telling us. But I'll go with an educated guess that everything is upsampled to DSD, maybe DSD 512, I don't know, but it sounds so effortless and everything is so liquid. It's like I'm listening to a very good super audio CD or a very good DSD recording. So I believe it upsamples, but I don't know everything to DSD. Tapping also calls it discrete because we have plenty of discrete components as diodes, resistors, even transistors, and not only at the output stage but also at the IV conversion stage, also at those 16-phase PSRM modules, so plenty of discrete components, and that's why I believe it sounds kind of different compared to their older designs like D90 SE and D90 MQA and D90 regular. We again have the best Bluetooth chip available right now, the one that supports all those fancy Bluetooth codecs, LDAC adaptive, aptX adaptive, but of course if you want maximum performance, use your brain, don't use Bluetooth, because Bluetooth is not really hi-fi, it's mostly for convenience. If you want the best, use its USB or I2S connection. For me, those are sounding the best. Last but not least, for the very first time, Topping implemented a very clever FPGA that lets you engage a parametric equalizer via 10 frequency bands. You can fine-tune the sound according to your preference, or maybe according to some room acoustic measurements that you did. You can save those presets and load them into your unit. For that, you'll need to install an app on your PC or Mac called Topping Tune. Connect your DAC to your PC or Mac via USB cable, launch the app, and from there everything is quite straightforward. You can pick the frequency, adjust the gain and Q factor, and you can even add or remove a preamp gain, so it's really up to you. The only thing you need to know is that the I2S input does not support the parametric equalizer function, and every other digital input supports this function for files up to 192 kHz and 32-bit PCME files. Alright guys, so how does the Topping D90 Discrete sounds compare to anything that Topping has made so far? If you watched at least 2 videos around here, then you know that for me, and probably for you as well, and for many other music lovers and audiophiles, there are several skills that you cannot go without having them. And for me, those two, the most important ones are 1, resolution, and 2, dynamics and transit response. I mean, what's the point of getting new speakers, new headphones, new DACs, new amplifiers if you cannot hear additional nuances, additional sounds, behind your tracks? Unfortunately for me, that happens very rarely nowadays because I'm testing so many equipment, and it's very rare when I can hear really some new nuances, new sounds from the tunes that I know for a lifetime. But when that happens, it makes me very happy. I'm jumping from my sofa and hey, there is a new note, hey, there's a new sound that I never heard. And this is actually what happened with D90 Discrete. It's something that I didn't wanted to believe at first, but yes, this is a very detailed, very resolving sounding DAC. In my opinion, is at least 2 levels above D90 SC, D90 MQA. It's more detailed compared to the SMSL SU10 that I've tested 1 month ago, and also more detailed compared to SMSL SU10 that I have reviewed 1 year and a few months ago. It's also more resolving compared to most art wireless DACs that I have tried around here. Certainly those below 2 kilobucks cannot show you as much information like D90 Discrete is doing so easily. And secondly, dynamics and transit response. For me, those are very important, sometimes even more important than resolution if I'm listening to electronica, rock and metal, and so forth. So when you are listening to these super fast tunes, you have like 20 notes per second, in that period of time, plenty of sounds in such a short lifespan. You need to have a DAC that is very resolving, but also very fast sounding, that has amazingly the edge, amazing contour of the notes. And if you are getting this slow, very smooth sounding DAC that is pressing the brakes, you simply cannot hear those notes anymore, and those are not really punchy. It makes you sleepy in a way. So that's exactly what I do not want to have with my electronica tunes. I want those tunes to pump some dopamine into my bloodstream. And this is what D90 Discrete is doing. It's not only very fast sounding, because plenty of Delta Sigma chip-based DACs are very fast sounding, but it also a very punchy sounding DAC. I believe it brings lots of energy, not only in the bass, but also in the treble as well, in the mid-range. And it also bonds the notes very unusually, like I'm constantly listening to DSD recordings or to a very good super audio CD player. I'm happy to report that every single skills that I just mentioned, all of that is present in the D90 Discrete, and this was so obvious that I didn't need to listen to it for a week or for a few days. It was like that, like from the first second. Even without any kind of burning, I knew that this is a very resolving, snappy, fast, punchy sounding unit that shows you an amazing distance between the lowest intensity note and also the highest intensity note. So when you are listening to this very silent orchestra and then a big drum is, appearing out of nowhere at 90 dB, you are basically jumping on your sofa. And that's what happens with the D90 Discrete, but not so much with its predecessors like D90 SE, D90 MQA, and from many other competitors as well. Overall, I'd say that its resolution slash transparency slash detailed retrieval and also dynamics and transit response are very impressive. I've been testing a lot of DACs lately, and sure enough, even from topping portfolio, there were units that impressed me in these regards, but the first 1-bit DAC from topping takes the lead in these very specific departments. I want to talk about one very important skill that I can hear with Super Audio CD players, I can hear with a few R2R ladder DACs, but not with all of them. It was present in my former flagship AudioByte Hydravox 1-bit DAC. Sadly, it's not so present in Delta Sigma chip-based DACs like the former D90 SE, D90 MQA, D90, SMSL. All of those that have chips inside, they don't have this skill. So sometimes you can hear me describing the sound of several DACs as robotic sounding. Robotic means that the sound is coming in steps, in waves, like, it's not a very natural delivery of the music. It's like it's micro-stuttering, something like that. But sometimes I'm describing the sound of a few DACs as liquid sounding, as pouring, down like a river, like a mountain spring. And in real life, that's exactly how music is supposed to sound. When I'm going to the opera, by the way, I'm going to the opera in 2 weeks with my wife. That will be a surprise for her. She doesn't know. When I'm going to the opera, I'm hearing the voices, going so smoothly, so easily, with so many beautiful overtones. I'm getting these goosebumps all the time. And this is how music is supposed to sound in real life, because how it sounds in real life. Unfortunately, not a lot of DACs have this skill, sounding liquid, bonding the notes with silk threads, so everything is going, super smoothly, super naturally. But I'm happy to report that this 1-bit DAC that is not very expensive has this important skill. So everything is pouring easily, naturally. My former flagship AudioByte Hydravox DAC was super liquid sounding. It was easily the most organic and easygoing DAC that I have heard today. It was not super resolving. You needed to work your way up to make it resolving, adding a really nice streamer. But it rendered the music in such a way that I wanted to listen to music for hours and hours. And that's exactly what I'm getting with this little D90 Discrete. Unfortunately, this effect is so very rare, especially with chip-based Delta Sigma converters that have Delta Sigma modulators, including in chord DACs, and all of these ESS Sabre AKM DACs. They sound quite robotic to me, and not as liquid, not as organic and an amazing flow like this one is having. Luckily, this effect is now present in a DAC costing less than $1,000 US. It's present in this guy right here. And we are not talking about the frequency response, about tonality, speed or decay, only about how the music is perceived by our brains. If you go back and check some of my older tapping DAC reviews, then you'll observe that I'm never hailing them to Cloud9 when it comes to soundstage capabilities, to scale, when it comes to depth. Only when it comes to imaging and how easy it is to focus on a note floating all around you. That was easy to make on every tapping DAC, but the scale, the depth was quite 2D, 2.5D, never really 3D sounding. But that all changed with the DX9, the limited edition unit of tapping. That one sounded definitely bigger. It was closed on R2R DAC. And also the separation of the notes. Finally, I could hear that the drummer is much deeper, that the soloist is much closer to me. So the sound was definitely more 3D sounding. And for the first time ever in a tapping DAC review, I could call that one as holographic sounding, a very interesting word. What I want to say is that D90 Discrete is definitely goes into the same direction. So this is also quite holographic, not on the same level with a flagship DAC, not on the same level with the Gustard X30 R26, but definitely better compared to D90 SE, SUX, SU10, compared even to entry-level R2 wireless DACs. So this one is again combining a bigger scale, a really nice depth. I can focus on things pretty easily, so I can call this one also holographic sounding. Not the biggest sounding, but definitely quite deep and very focused sounding from plenty of things that tapping has, making as of late. This effect, holographic sounding, is present in most R2 wireless DACs, but usually in bigger R2 wireless DACs that have those massive output stages. Those are always quite big sounding. My Rockna Wave Dream Signature, the Musician Taurus, amazing in terms of scale. Sadly, with chip-based Delta Sigma converters, this skill is not really quite present. Sometimes, but more often not really. So the scale is not so impressive on chip-based converters, only on some of them, like Ferrum Wandla, like Gustard X30. That one was actually quite a big surprise. So I'm happy to report that D90 Discrete has some of that holography. So definitely we can talk about Soundstage, not only in a loudspeaker setup, but also in a headphone-based setup. Because with open back headphones, you can still hear that separation of notes, you can hear that depth, you can hear how big is the scale, and that is happening with D90 Discrete. So yes, D90 Discrete has some of that magic that makes music float all around you, and you can pick up the notes from thin air with the power of your imagination. So did I hear bigger sounding and more holographic sounding DACs? Of course I did, lots and lots and lots of units, but did I hear a more holographic unit below 1 kilobuck? Well, this is a very tricky question and I'm not sure I can reply to it. There were many units very close to this performance, like SU10 from SMSL, but those were not exactly on the same level. There is another thing that I want to discuss with you that I no longer discuss, sadly or luckily, with my DAC reviews: the noise floor. 20 years ago, having an amazing power supply that will kill the noise in these huge DACs would be super expensive, and of course you need to pay lots of money to have this super high dynamic range and super low noise floor. But nowadays there are so many noise suppression mechanics that you don't need to spend an arm and a leg for this super low noise floor and super high dynamic range. And there are plenty of examples to give. Even from topping portfolio, there are several 300, 200 DACs that are completely noiseless. However, not all of these super affordable DACs have this super dark background. Sometimes I'm listening to music like soprano voices in an opera, and there is a voice that is so far away from you, and there is so many movements in the auditorium that you try to focus on that voice, but it's so hard piercing the veil, and it's so hard to focus because the noise floor is actually killing everything. But sometimes you are hearing this amazing DAC that has a super dark background that you don't need to stress yourself, and even if that voice is so far away from you, you can focus on its beauty, on its intricacies so easily. And that's again what I'm getting with the D90 Discrete. Not a lot of DACs have these skills, usually the ones that do something with the power supply, with some noise suppression mechanics, but that is happening with the D90 Discrete. This effect is of course very pleasing, and it's something that I'm always looking forward to, and it's something that I'm always getting from the D90 Discrete. The last part that I want to discuss with you would be its tonality and frequency response. But once again, I'm reminding you that I'm not reviewing, you know, a Rockna, a Denner Frips, a musician DAC, a chord electronics DAC. I'm reviewing a tapping DAC, so this is very important. This is an ultra linear sounding DAC, so as straight as a line, nothing goes up and down in terms of frequency response. Everything is dead neutral and flat, but at the same time, it's not boring sounding. So if you are expecting to get, you know, a warm sounding, a sweet sounding DAC, a mellow sounding DAC, a bright sounding DAC, you know, a dark sounding DAC, that's not really the case. This one is straight as a line, everything is on the same level. But I'm here to tell you that quality of the frequency response is higher than usual. For example, the bass and the treble. I want to talk about this, and also the mid-range as well. You get more details in the bass compared to, say, D90 SE, compared to SU10, compared to SUX. There are more nuances in the bass, so this is a very high quality type of bass. It's more layered type of bass. The treble is very clear, it's refined, but it's not really doesn't have that fake ringing in the treble. So it's not really bright or clinical sounding, it's very honest, but also dead neutral in the treble. It's very extended, but without being fake and bothersome sounding in the treble. And also the mid-range, it's no longer thin sounding like I'm getting with very affordable DACs. It's not warm or sweet, but it's definitely, you know, flat and neutral sounding. So this part can be a good thing or maybe a bad thing for you. It really depends on the listener. Sometimes I like to have some colorations, sometimes I don't like to have some colorations. But right now we're not getting any kind of colorations with the D90 Discrete. I thought at first that having so many discrete components, it will definitely sound a little warmer, a little sweeter maybe in the mid-range, but that is not really the case with the D90 Discrete. Again, we are discussing about a tapping made DAC. These guys are always about linearity and being, you know, super linear, dead flat. And that's exactly what we're getting with the D90 Discrete. Wrapping up, I wanted to compare this one with plenty of units like SMSL SUX, SU10, tapping D90 SE, but the more time I was listening to music and more I was researching about this one, I realized that all of those units do not have the same engineering, the same components, and more importantly, the same sound. I don't like to mess around with words. It's not really in my nature. I don't like to hide things to Cloud9, but it's really hard complaining about this one when talking about its sound. Only that tonality, you know, ultra-linear tonality would be something that I could complain. I would like to have maybe a little bit more life in the mid-range. And this plastic remote control is again not so cool, but except for this is a really amazing sounding DAC. And I know many of you are still hunting for that perfect sounding DAC below 1 kilobuck. And I do believe for the viewers of my channel, this is that DAC. I do believe it has lots of impressive skills, resolution, transparency, holography, dynamic range, transient response, noise floor, all of that is truly impressive. Something that you usually need to pay a top dollar to get these skills. So yes, this is a very honest, ultra-linear sounding DAC, and if you don't like to have these colorations, this is a very easy recommendation to make. That's all for now. Don't forget to come back for the next DAC reviews. No spoilers for now, but those are equally impressive, if not even better. Okay guys, keep rocking, and I'll see you very soon. Cheers!